Hi, my name is Reverend Susan Sparks. I'm the pastor of Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City. This is Preaching in a Pandemic, what they didn't teach you in seminary. Welcome. Oh my gosh, how gross was that? But how many times do we see that on camera, right? People just completely go into robot mode. There's no facial expression, their voice is a monotone, they just stare off into space and talk, or they read it straight off the page, and it is the worst thing ever. Today we're talking about how to avoid the Cyborg Syndrome, and it's a bad thing. It's a really bad thing. In fact, let me ask my friend, the nun, what do you think about people that preach with a cyborg syndrome? I'm going to wind her up. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Let's see if I can put her on a flat surface. She walks and spits fire. So I think, what do you think about people preaching with the cyborg syndrome? Yep. I don't think she's very happy about it. I get it. I understand it's bad, right? So there we have it. Everybody agree, experts agree, you should not be a cyborg on camera. So today I want to talk about how we avoid that. Let's start with why does it happen? I think there's a million reasons, but we only have 10 minutes. So my best answer to that is that people get too much into their heads. They get into their head that everything has to be perfect, that every word has to be perfect, every sentence has to be perfect, every Hebrew verb has to be conjugated perfectly, every verse has to be exegeted perfectly. People, newsflash, no one cares. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't do your homework, I'm not saying don't work really hard to craft your sermon the best you can, I'm not saying don't do the research. I'm just saying, let go of the idea that it has to be perfect. Perfect does not translate on camera. It doesn't work on camera. Perfect is boring. Perfect is flat. Come on. When people tune into to your service, they're not looking for rightness. They're looking for realness. They're not looking for perfection. They are looking for relatable. They want intimacy and honesty and warmth and welcome. That's what people want. That's what they yearn for, always. Not just in the middle of a pandemic, but always. Here's my one-line takeaway. So if you're running tight on time and you want to, bolt out of here after this point, take this away. Here you go. When you combine a well-crafted sermon with a fully present, authentic preacher, it's magic. Magic. Now don't bolt after this because now I'm going to tell you how to do it. But that's the bottom line. The thing is, you got to let go of that belief that it has to be perfect. Now I want to take a moment and unpack the psychology behind that a bit, and I want to do it through the idea of hecklers in a comedy club. Most of you know that I'm a professional stand-up comedian. I spent years doing the open mic scene in New York City. God help me. And now I'm on tour with a rabbi and a Muslim comic in the Laugh and Peace tour. Our audiences now are much friendlier, thank goodness. But I do remember those days of going up in those dark, smoky clubs, and those hecklers could be nasty. People, especially after the 2-drink minimum, get drunk and ugly, and they yell things back at the performers. Usually those hecklers are people who are unhappy in their own life, people who are disappointed, angry, people who perhaps want to be doing what you're doing but don't have the guts to get up there and do it. But hecklers aren't just in comedy clubs. Hecklers are in church too. Can I have an amen? You know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's a congregation member who never likes your sermons and always comes back with something you could do better. You know what I'm talking about? Maybe it's a congregation member, maybe it's a friend or colleague or even a family member. I hate to say it, but hecklers sometimes come from the people we're closest to. Maybe we should have another amen. It only takes one, and then their voice gets in our head. And once that voice gets in our head, then their voice becomes our voice, And that's where things start to unravel. All of a sudden, you're up in front in a pulpit, or you're in front of a camera, and those voices start spinning in your head. You start believing that perhaps I'm not good enough. This is not that great of a sermon. I'm not very good on camera. I'm not a very good preacher. I'm not a good person, on and on and on. And your body starts to react. You start to shrink so that you don't take up quite so much space. Your shoulders slump, which means you lose air power in your lungs. You drop eye contact, because God forbid you don't want to look at people feeling like that about yourself. You drop eye contact, you lose the power, like we talked about last week. You shrink, you lose lung power, which means projection. Now you're looking at the floor, talking to the carpet. People can't hear you. You've lost the power, you've lost the voice, you've lost the power, the voice, the intimacy. And the next thing you know, you're just sort of having an outer body experience, and you're on autopilot, thinking to yourself, please God, let this be over. We've all been there. We have all been there. But that is how it happens. I want to share these words with you from Dr. Fred Craddock, who has been my mentor from the time I was in seminary. And he said this: to refuse to use one's own language is a clear evidence of a lack of faith. I'm going to say that again. To refuse to use one's own language is a clear evidence of a lack of faith. I have that printed on my office wall because that, to me, is the whole ballgame of preaching. And when he says language, it's more than just the words. To refuse to use one's own language means your speech, but also you, your personality, your heart, your emotions, your experiences, your stories. It means all of who you are, your uniqueness. That's the gift that God gave us. And to refuse to bring that unique gift fully present in your sermons is a clear evidence of a lack of faith. A friend of mine put it like this: the 3 B's, the letter B. Believe, behave, become. What we believe up here over time drives how we behave. And how we behave over time drives who we become. We got to get our mind clear. We got to get what is the words and the voices up here in control. We've got to know what's being said, and we've got to make sure it's the right things that are being said. One thing that I do every once in a while is when a negative voice starts coming into my head, I stop and I ask myself, is it true? Is what that voice saying true? 99.9% of the time, it's not. So then you ask yourself, if it's not true, why am I listening? And maybe more importantly, who would I be if I didn't listen? Is it true? Why am I listening? And who would I be without listening? Important analysis to go through. So you got to get a rein on what's being said in your head, what the hecklers are saying to you in your head. And in the meantime, while you're working on the psychological aspect of it, here are 3 practical tips in simple delivery that you can do when you're on camera to help bring that authenticity through. First and foremost, think of a person around whom you are most relaxed. Maybe it's a spouse or partner, maybe it's one of your kids, maybe it's a dear friend or a family member, a brother or sister, maybe it's a pet. Whoever it is, that person is in the lens. That's who you're talking to. You're not talking to your congregation. You're not talking to the world, millions of people, thousands of people, hundreds, whatever. You're talking to that one person or animal or pet or whatever, right there in the camera. That's who you're talking to. And if it's hard for you to do that in your mind, to imagine them there, put a photograph right by the camera. Put a photograph of that person or that pet near the camera, out of camera range, so that you see them and it reminds you over and over, that's who you're talking to. You'd be shocked at the difference in how you deliver based on a formal delivery of a sermon versus how you'd give it to this best friend. In fact, I'll be honest with you, we're family now. I can kind of pull the curtain back. I have playing right now my little trick. I am addicted to this eagle cam that I'm watching. The National Eagle Federation has webcams at eagles' nests. This one's in Tennessee, and it's a baby eagle, and his name, I've nicknamed him Sam. And, oh, Mama just left. But here is Sam in the nest. Let's see if can you see that? Isn't that great? There's something about that just brings me such joy. And, yeah, oh, he's getting ready to take a nap. Okay, take a nap, Sam. It just makes my blood pressure go down. And I think about, how would I give this, while, like, trying to explain it to Sam. Like, it just changes internally your emotions and your heart and how you present the message. So number one, take someone that you dearly love, someone whom you feel very comfortable around, or something that makes you feel super relaxed and comfortable, and put them in the camera. Number two, focus on the audience and not yourself. It's very easy to worry about, oh my gosh, is the sermon right? Is it something that people will like? Is it something that is smart? Is it well done? Is it smartly crafted? Is it exegetically sound? How will it be received? Is it something that the world needs now? On and on and on. You know what? Instead of worrying about yourself, like how will I be perceived, or how will my message be perceived, take the focus and shift it back out, and think about what people need right now and how you bring something to meet that. Think about how sad people are right now, how scared people are right now, how lonely people are right now, and how that just showing up, really not even so much what you say, but the physical presence of you on screen is going to bring comfort to so many. Take the worry and the burden off of how will I be perceived, and your worries about being perfect and having everything just so off. It's not about you, it's about them. So put the energy, the focus out there on what they need, and it kind of lifts a little bit of the stress. And number three, last but not least, if you mess up, just call it out. You've seen in a couple of the past videos, I might have made a mistake or two here. Of course I did. You just call it out and you move on. I write a nationally syndicated column that goes out to a load of newspapers, like maybe 800, something like that, across the country. And a couple of months ago, I wrote what I thought was just the greatest column ever about Elvis, until it went up and was published, and I realized that I said Elvis was born in Memphis. He was not. He was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. Hello. He grew up in Memphis. I can't even tell you the firestorm that came out of that. I mean, this was a mistake on, like, turbocharge. So many people were like, he wasn't born in Memphis, blah, blah. Anyway, what did I do? The next week, the next column was about mistakes. The lead line was, I made a mistake. My great apologies to the Elvis fans. Here it is. Let's talk about how we can learn from mistakes. You just got to call it out and use it and move on. Again, we're not perfect, and we want to be authentic and real, not perfect. I mean, bottom line, think about it like this. If you're 10 minutes into the sermon and you really mess up something, do you want to re-record the whole thing? No. And you don't need to. Just stop and go, you know what? I misspoke. So, sorry, y'all. Here's what I really wanted to say. End of story. People hear that. It actually endears you a little bit because you're human and real. And they might even remember the point more because it emphasizes it in a new and different way. The worst thing you can do is ignore it. If something goes on around you, some unexpected sound or weird thing, or like sometimes I'll hit my stand where the notes are, who cares? Acknowledge it. The worst thing you can do is ignore it. We had a guy in our congregation years ago named Charlie McCarthy. Don't you love that? For those of you of older years, you know that was a famous vaudeville character name. Charlie was 8 years old. He sat right here on the front row, and he was hard of hearing. So in our prayers, always in a really poignant moment, like praying for world peace or something like that, you would hear Charlie just take a deep breath and go, Lord, you got to help the Mets. They're awful. They stink. Dead quiet. What do? You can't not call it out. So I would usually say something like, yes, Lord, the Mets are having a bad season. Help them. just like you help our brothers and sisters in blah, and then you go on. What are you going to do? You got to call it out, because when you call it out, you are in the moment, you are real. It's like being at a cocktail party and something, somebody's just talking to you, or you're talking to somebody and they're just nodding and nodding, going, and they're a million miles away. You want to go, hello, is anybody in there? Reacting to what's going on around you is a way to be present, is a way to be real, is a way to be authentic. I'll leave you with this story that kind of, I think, emphasizes and brings home what we were talking about today. Back in the day, I was a trial lawyer before I went to seminary, and I also was trying to make a go at being a country western singer. I know, so crazy. Anyway, the bottom line is I would go to court, my little suit, and try to be all prim and proper in front of everybody, and the juries weren't really having it. They were not really engaging like I had hoped they would. And I was there in my little proper suit and using nouns and verbs that agreed and la la la. Then at the end of the day, I would take the suit, throw it in the back of the Jeep, and I'd go to these dark, smoky country bars, and I would sing country music. Neither world knew about the other. The lawyers in the firm didn't know I was singing country music, and the people at the country music bars certainly didn't know I was a lawyer. One night, I'm singing at the Wagon Wheel, and behind chicken wire, and there was a break in the set. House lights go up, and there is the managing partner of my law firm sitting front row. I'm just like, oh no, I'm gonna get fired. He rears back, laughs, comes up to see me during the break, and he goes, "Where's that woman on stage? She'd make a great trial lawyer." And it was in that moment that I realized that to really shine, you got to bring all of who you are to what you do, all of it. And that means the creative side, that means the unique parts of us that we always maybe want to mask up because we're not sure how they'll be perceived or experienced. You got to bring all of who you are to what you do, even if that means singing country music in front of a jury, which I did, by the way, and it worked. But you've got to be real, you've got to be authentic, and that is what bonds you to your congregation, and that's what makes it work on camera. So this is my homework for you. I want you to watch your sermon from yesterday, and then I want you to re-record the first 2 or 3 minutes, and I want you to do it with a photograph of a loved one or a pet or whatever taped right next to the camera, and give it to them. Just a couple of minutes, even 30 seconds. Watch that, and then watch it compared to how you gave it yesterday, and see if there isn't a huge difference. I wish you blessings this week. I hope you have a great week. And I will see you next Monday when we are going to be talking about how do you write a sermon, craft a sermon that honors the gospel, but maybe as importantly, keeps people's attention. Until then.